FOILED. The enemy's plan. Ravi Ranjan Goswami. Dedication. To all security forces and intelligence organizations of India. The 1st of March 1st, 2016. Chennai, India. Rajesh was inside his room at the Trident Hotel in Chennai. Outside, a strong wind was blowing. He could see through the window outside. Dark clouds promised heavy rain. Soon it rained hard. He could hear it pelting the windows. It was around 6 p.m. He opened the mini fridge kept in a corner and found a few beers cans and fruit. He liked none of the items there. He picked up the phone, dialed room service, and ordered a large Black Label whiskey. Rajesh felt cold, so he switched off the air conditioner by its remote. Then he picked up the remote to the TV and turned it on. He searched channels to find something of his interest. He found a ghazal program in Delhi Doordarshan's Urdu channel, which he liked. He sat on a couch and enjoyed that. After some time, doorbell rang. He guessed there might be a room service staff. He had not locked the door, so he said, "Come in, please." The waiter came in with a tray carrying his orders. He set whiskey, soda, and a bowl of cashew nuts on the coffee table and offered to prepare a drink for him if he liked. He said, "No, thanks." The waiter bowed and left the room. Rajesh went to the door and put a "Do Not Disturb" tag outside, closed the door, and got back. He prepared his drink, mixing enough soda with whiskey. Then he carefully lifted the glass, had a long sip, and waited for a few moments to feel its taste and effect. He felt a soothing warmth in his body. Then he began enjoying his drink and gizzles. Whiskey and gizzles were complementing each other. The influence of whiskey made gizzles more enjoyable, and gizzles were enhancing the enjoyment of whiskey. For a while, he forgot the purpose of his being there. His cell phone beeped. This was an alarm showing his time to go to the airport to catch his flight to Singapore. 2. After the flight took off and the seatbelt sign went off, Rajesh pushed back his seat and relaxed. He had been a detective agent for 15 years. He had enjoyed his work, full of suspense, action, surprises, and thrills. He had busted many anti-national gangs and neutralized a good number of key operators of a few terrorist organizations in India and overseas. This assignment surprised him. He was disappointed as well. He was only 30 years old, but he wondered if the people considered him too old for a more challenging task, hence assigned a dull job. Because of his extraordinary capability and intelligence, he had become a notorious agent among their rivals. They keenly watched his moves. Therefore, his final destination was different. When he was flying to Singapore, his flight landed smoothly at the Changi airport at around 4:50 a.m. Singapore time. He adjusted his wristwatch to local time. He had not any checked-in baggage. Therefore, after immigration clearance, he cleared customs with no delay and came out. Rajesh had a room waiting at the Marriott Hotel, so he boarded the hotel's luxury bus waiting outside. He was the first passenger to get on the bus. Slowly passengers trickled into the bus. Eventually, it pulled out. He slept comfortably for a few hours at the hotel. In the morning, when he woke up, he quickly got cleaned up, dressed and rushed to the coffee shop. He would meet Leila after a gap of 5 years. Leila was already at the table when Rajesh walked in. She gave him a charming smile and winked. He went to her and sat in front of her. 5 years is way too long, Raj, she said, taking his hand in her hands. Rajesh stared at her face. Way too long, he sighed. His old love squinted at his hair. Have you dyed your hair? Rajesh laughed. What a question to break the ice. There is no ice between us. There has been only physical distance and a few boundaries. You're right. It is a pleasant surprise to see you again. I am also glad to see you. When are we leaving? Tonight. Have you married, Rajesh? No. Good. I can still hope. Saying she laughed. Rajesh also smiled. She passed over an envelope to Rajesh. Here are your passports, ticket and other documents. Let us meet at the airport in the evening. 3. Singapore. When Rajesh reached the Changi airport, he found Leila already waiting at the departure terminal. They checked in and proceeded to the security check. After the security check, they sat in a lounge. This time things were not clear to his mind, though he himself introduced the subject of the culture and faith in the meeting, called to discuss terrorism and the proxy war. He believed his ideas but did not know the way to execute them. This was not a simple battle. He knew how to fight an armed enemy. Here he was clueless. Who were the real enemies and where he could find them? Ting, tong. He attentively heard the announcement. It was an announcement for boarding the Silk Air Flight No. 495 to Islamabad. It requested passengers to proceed to the Gate 3 to board the flight. They joined the queue of the passengers. They took a roughly half an hour to board the plane and occupy their seats. They travelled the economy class this time. They kept their handbags in the overhead vaults and sat down. Rajesh buckled his seatbelt. He was feeling relaxed, unlike on other missions when he was alert even in slumber. Layla was a little intrigued by his passive mood. He looked relaxed but not happy. She looked around and peeked over the passengers sitting around. They all looked normal. Layla decided not to disturb him. She felt a thud and realized that the aircraft had undocked from the vestibule and was turning away from the terminal. Soon the plane picked up speed and took off for Islamabad, Pakistan. Abdul was totally upset. He came after slapping his wife and yet he was burning with rage. He felt like going back home and thrash her nicely. He knew his anger and thought it was good he did not have a gun. He feared that he might shoot his wife Sadia in a fit of rage. Sadia loved her husband, but was possessive about him and always doubted him. She could not tolerate if Abdul talked with any woman. That day she saw him talking with his elder brother's wife on the street. When he came home, she pounced on him verbally. Who was that woman? Which woman do you mean? That woman you were flirting in the street. Oh, she was Suhani Babi. Can't you talk from a distance? What do you mean? She is my elder brother's wife. She is also a young woman, and you were almost touching her. He felt as if his wife had abused him. He could not imagine what she had alleged indirectly. He slapped her hard and went out of the house in anger. He did not want to escalate the quarrel or become more violent. He had to receive the guests from the airport at night. He washed his cab. At night, he received Rajesh and Leela at the Benazir Bhutto International Airport and dropped them at the Plaza Hotel. Abdul had been ferrying customers of the Plaza Hotel for the last 2 years and he was happy with this. He generally found the customers decent and there were no bargaining over charges. He received payment from the hotel. After finishing his job, he returned to his home. He hesitated for a moment before pressing the doorbell. He recalled the day's incident of slapping his wife. He feared her yet to be in a quarrelling mood. Finally, he rang the bell. Sadia opened the door. Abdul felt a great relief when she smiled and went to the kitchen. Abdul went to the bathroom to freshen up. When he came out, he found Sadia waiting for him with food and a glass of milk. He always liked to have a glass of milk before going to bed. It was already late, and they both were drowsy. He quickly finished the food, drank milk, and went to the bed followed by Sadia. Soon they fell asleep. The night passed eventless. 5. Delhi, India. Alex disembarked. The Etihad Airlines flight arrived from Lagos at the Indira Gandhi International Airport and proceeded to the immigration counter with bated breath. He almost slipped his tongue when the officer at the counter asked his name while flipping through his passport. He would say, Alan George. He corrected it to Alex George. The officer stamped his passport and returned it to him. He tried to maintain a confident look while walking through the green channel of the exit. Customs did not disturb him. He got to the exit and smoothly walked out. Peter waved his hand towards him. Instead of getting his car there, Peter signaled to Alan to come to the parking field. Alex followed Peter. Peter occupied the driving seat of a white car and Alex sat by his side. Alex knew Peter since his last visit to Delhi. Peter was a local man and a man of resources. Peter dropped him at a house in Indira Nagar. A few African students known to Alex had taken this house for rent. Alex was always welcome there. Whenever he would come there, he would have a wonderful party for all of them. A few girls from their continent living in Delhi would also join them. Alex had told them he was an agent of a diamond company. Same as on previous occasions, Alex hosted a party in the evening. Peter was the only outsider in that party. The next morning Peter dropped Alex at the airport with a ticket to Cochin, as directed by KK, a drug mafia of Kerala. 6. Cochin, India. KK received a message on his WhatsApp from Vipin, a Hawala agent. I am going to board the Indigo flight. KK sent a message. Confirm after boarding and keep in touch. After some time, a Vipin's message was, boarded the plane, about to take off so going offline. About 2 hours later, a message came, pit stop and hide. By this time, he had made the arrangements. Alex had already reached Cochin and negotiated the deal with a local drug dealer. Vipin was bringing the money. Alex proved useful for both local and foreign parties. They knew Alex could take any risk for money and he was hungry for it. Alex received Vipin from the Cochin International Airport. KK had arranged for them a trip to the Munnar, a beautiful hill station near Cochin. One day Alex and Vipin stayed in a homestay at Fort Cochin, the old part of the city. They enjoyed kinds of seafood and relaxed. The next day at around 6 a.m., they embarked on their journey to Munnar by a Mazda car provided by KK. The driver was a young man named Shyam. He only knew the actual goal of these two individuals. KK had told Alex and Vipin to go along with him. The whole day Shyam took them to various spots of tourists' interest. Alex took a few selfies of him alone and a few with Vipin and Shyam before a picturesque waterfall and inside a tea garden. Afternoon suddenly the weather turned murky, and it rained. They took shelter in a roadside restaurant and used this time to have coffee, with some snacks. By the time the rain stopped, it became dark. As soon as it stopped raining, all three got into the car and the driver Shyam pulled the car on. Soon they were driving on a dark muddy road. After half an hour, Shyam stopped the car by the side of the road and asked Alex and Vipin to get down from the car and follow him. He led them to a nearby coconut grove. There was a small timber cottage in the grove's middle. Shyam knocked on the door. The door opened and a young couple welcomed them inside. The room had a low-powered CFL bulb giving just enough light to see the faces and the surrounding. They had a few canes, chairs and a table for the visitors. The couple requested them to sit and offered drinks, but Alex and Vipin felt nervous there. Vipin took her bundles of dollars and kept on the table. The man counted the money. The woman brought a leather bag containing a few coconuts. She had stuffed the drug inside a few dry coconuts, making a hole in each and resealed after stuffing. It is a fact people do dealings in crime and corruption with more honesty and trust. Within a few minutes, the transaction was complete, and they were motoring back to Cochin. 7. Islamabad, Pakistan. The next morning Rajesh and Leila walked out of the hotel. They planned to hire a vehicle from the outside. They could hardly walk off 100 yards when they heard a big explosion behind them. They looked back and saw the Plaza Hotel engulfed in flames. People were running in chaos. They also ran away from the place. After achieving an apparently safe distance, they stopped to catch their breath. Police, military, and fire brigade vehicles were rushing to the spot of the blast. They sensed the trouble for themselves there and left Islamabad same day. They recognized that the police would begin an action soon and might like to question them too. They did not know the place. They saw a board, Altaf Hotel, Aliganj. They immediately entered the hotel and occupied a table. People around were talking about the blast at the Plaza Hotel. Rajesh called Abdul over the phone and asked him to come over. They're prepared to travel to Rawalpindi, not a far-off place, but they might require Abdul to stay there for a day. Abdul was there in half an hour. By the time they had finished their food, they made the payment and immediately started by Abdul's cab. God is great. Both of you are safe, Abdul said while steering the vehicle through a haphazard crowd and traffic. The 8th of March the 3rd, 2016, Delhi, India. This was a periodic routine meeting of the bosses of the top intelligence agencies in India. This time, their concern was different and strange too. Remarkable drop in the incidence of infiltrations and the ceasefire violations by Pakistan recently. In politics, people attributed this to the improved relationship between the two nations. However, PMO had instructed the Defence and Home Ministries to be extra vigilant. Hence, In this meeting they talked about this lull and tried to see if it was a consequence of some positive change in the neighbours' policy or the enemy was secretly cooking some plan against India. The meeting was over in Anna and a report was sent to PMO, MOD, MHA, and MEA. After the meeting, Daljit Singh returned to his office at the SWIB, Software Intelligence Bureau. This was a newly formed organisation of the government. Immediately after reaching, he called Sanjay Srivastava, his deputy. Sanjay came there within no time. He was about 50 years of age, half-bald, medium height, and clean-shaven man. With his loose power glass frame, which often tried to slither down his nose, he seemed like an absent-minded professor, but in reality, he was always alert and could determine the invisible in the international affairs. He was looking after Pakistan matters. "May I come in?" "Please come in, Srivastava." Srivastava came in and sat down. He did not require permission for this. Srivastava looked at him and waited for him to speak. "What is going on in our dear neighbour's side? Now we need to tighten the internal security. We can post an alert tomorrow. What is on the borders? No concern. Can you say anything?" asked Daljit and added, "Let it be specific." "Don't worry, sir. We can't escape from an allegation of intelligence failure by the politicians and we can't disclose their detail to defend us." Sanjay said in jest and added, "Wait for a few more days, sir. I have sent Rajesh on a tour to Pakistan. I don't doubt when he is under your tutelage." "Thank you. Sir, you focus on the east, leave this area for me." Srivastava took leave of Daljit and went to his room. After making a few phone calls, he left for his home. At home, he was sitting with his wife. They were having tea together. His wife was talking to him about something. It is very much irritating sometimes when you are thinking or doing something important for you and your wife wants your attention to her interest. Such situations become volatile to the disadvantage of both who do not want to hurt each other. Srivastava was viewing the news on TV, which was showing the news of the blast at the Hotel Plaza in Pakistan. He thought about Rajesh. His wife told him about the conversation she had with her brother over the phone. It could be nice if he had requested her to be silent for a while. Instead, he tried to do both, listening to her and analysing the news. However, shortly he lost his patience and curtly asked her to shut up for a while. After telling her to shut up, he felt he had committed a mistake. She would sulk for many hours. 9. Delhi. Alex was feeling too drowsy to sit straight. He could not have the luxury of falling asleep just half an hour before his train had to reach Delhi. Now and then, his head would move down overwhelmed by sleepiness and would yield to normal with a jolt. As soon as the train slowed down before touching the station, Alex picked up his luggage and got to the gate of the compartment to disembark immediately when the train stopped. When the train stopped at the platform, he got down from the train. He hired a coolie to carry his suitcase. He tied his backpack on his back and followed the coolie, carrying his suitcase on his head. He followed him at a safe distance so that he could escape in case any trouble arose. He had sent a major portion of the drug by courier from Cochin to some European countries, but still, he was carrying enough to put him behind the bars for a few years. This quantity of heroin was for Peter. Peter used to buy drugs in small quantities from various sources and supplied to some college students at the behest of one Karim, who gave him the money to buy drugs and a good remuneration for delivering. 10. Washington, USA. February 2016. Senator Mark was a man of strong likes and dislikes. He was a devout nationalist. Recently he had visited India as a delegate to a study group. He almost loved India for her remarkable momentum of development and resilience in the face of a global slowdown. He also hated India for the same reasons. He saw India as a challenge to American interests in Asia. He opposed the American government for becoming comparatively friendlier towards India. He had invited Professor Albert for a coffee. Albert's grandfather, Dr. Wahid, had migrated from Pakistan to America in his youth just after the partition of India. His only son Shiraz married an Arab woman, Samina. Albert was the only son of Shiraz and had married an American Muslim woman, Zoya, who fell for his intellect, academic credentials, and radical views on various social and political issues. When the professor arrived, Mark received him with great warmth. Albert liked Mark for his hardline approach and boldness against the power. Even the president was wary of this man. Mark and Albert had coffee sitting along the balcony facing the lawn in front of the mansion. Mark inquired, "How is Zoya?" "She is fine." "How is your research work progressing?" "It is going on well. Hope the sponsors do not unduly influence your work. I consider you as my patron and you have already influenced me." Saying so, the professor laughed. "Are you working alone?" "Not at all. I have engaged several students with me. A few Americans rest from Bangladesh, China, India, a few Europeans from China. To take help of the communists sometime. They are down but not out. Their cadre is still strong in some parts of the world. Professor, I have got you included in the panel of academicians visiting the Lahore University to deliver a lecture in a Ford lecture series and later on a few Indian universities. This is great news. Thank you very much. You are the most welcome, Professor." After finishing the coffee, Albert took leave of Mark and went straight to his home. 11. Drive. Wahid was sitting in a corner of the sprawling lawn of his mansion sipping his evening green tea. Unlike many other displaced persons of India and Pakistan of her age, he did not migrate at the time of the partition. However, he had witnessed the partition and felt the pain of it. Post-partition he came from Lahore to the USA for higher studies. He wished to return, but some other reason he continued there to a point of no return. He started a small clinic, married a girl from a Pakistani Muslim family settled in the USA, built a moderate house in Kent, Washington, and finally settled there. His son Shiraj did well in the automotive components business. He converted the moderate house into a mansion. Dr. Wahid had bought a large plot of land though he had built a small house on it. Shiraz's son Ali Baksh was interested in academics. He did his schooling from a local school run by the American Pakistani Muslims. After that, he joined a Christian high school and later at the College of Humanities and Science, where he studied political science. Eventually, he earned a Ph.D. from Washington University and became employed there as an assistant professor. By temperament, he was a philosopher revolutionary at least in the eyes of his family. He had a troubled adolescence. In the aftermath of 9/11, once, Albert's American schoolmates lynched him. This incident was a big shock and traumatic experience for him. He could not dare go back to the school for a few weeks. Ali Baksh understood that the trouble happened because of his Muslim identity, so he changed his name from Ali Baksh to Albert. There happened a few sporadic incidents of attack on the Muslims in the immediate repercussion of 9/11 and soon the normalcy returned. However, Ali Baksh kept his changed name Albert for good. Dr. Wahid loved his family and was proud of the fact they lived together under the same roof. He saw Albert's car entering the gate. After parking his car in the garage, he came to Dr. Wahid. "Dada Jan, I will visit Pakistan shortly," Albert said to Dr. Wahid. "Great. Who else is going and when?" "I have to go there shortly to give a lecture at the Lahore University. Why don't you come with me?" "You know I cannot." Wahid hinted at his heart problem. "I am sorry, but I wished you could. Inshallah, once before dying, I will visit there. Inshallah, you will travel shortly and I will take you there." Saying these comforting words, Albert went inside the house. 12. Albert maintained all the disciplines of his religion except alcohol. During his college days, he drank wine at parties. If sometimes he felt compunction about it, he comforted himself by comparing with the other boys from his community who had much more bad habits. He was not a regular drinker and his family members, except his wife, were not aware of his drinking habit. He was excited after meeting Senator Mark and knowing about his prospective visit to Pakistan and India. Normally he had dinner with his grandfather and father. That night he wanted to celebrate by drinking wine. A bottle of wine was lying in his cupboard. He asked his wife Zoya to bring him food in their bedroom. She told a lie to Papa and Dada that Albert was having a headache so he would have dinner late in the bedroom itself. She set the food in the bedroom. Albert drank a few glasses of wine and shared food with Zoya. She knew to be an occasional drinker, he would be drunk with the measures of wine he had consumed. It had happened earlier. She made the bed immediately after finishing the food. As expected, After food, Albert kissed her and ran straight to the bed. Sooner than later, he fell asleep. Zoya removed used dishes and sneaked in the bed by his side. 13. Since Albert had told him about his prospective visit to Pakistan, Dr. Wahid had been quite nostalgic. All the joys and sorrows of his early life became alive before his eyes. He missed his childhood days. He remembered Lala Ram Chacha, Sita Chachi, Kusumappa, his Hindu neighbours, and Ramesh, Rafiq, Javed, his childhood friends. At the time of the partition of India and Pakistan, Dr. Wahid was about 7 years old. His father Yusuf and Lala uncle were close friends and business partners. They had bought a big house together unpartitioned it, raising a wall in its courtyard. A special thing about this wall was a doorway in it, which remained open, and both the families would visit each other any time through this door. Sita Chachi loved him like his own child and often gave him sweets to eat. Kusumappa used to play with him and helped him with his homework. Yusuf's family was equally caring towards Kusum. All were going on fine, then suddenly intercommunal riots started, accompanied by arson, looting and killing. There was an exchange of population between India and Pakistan, according to the choice of the people. However, many people migrated fearing for their lives in the wake of heightened distrust between the communities. Many non-Muslims were compelled to leave Pakistan, and many Muslims were compelled to leave India. Dr. Wahid recalled how Sita Chachi and Kusumappa hugged him and wept at the time of leaving. Both the families cried. Lala Raman family left for India and Punjab, saying they would return when things got normal, but that never happened. Recalling those days, Dr. Wahid's eyes became moist and lips quivered. He felt like crying but controlled his emotions as Shiraz appeared there with his medicines. 14. Islamabad. March 3, 2016. This was a meeting of the government agencies, but they also invited the Maulana. The venue of the meeting was the Ayesha headquarters in Islamabad. Representatives of intelligence, army, finance, defense and home ministries and the Maulana was present in the meeting. It did not look like a formal meeting with an agenda. All sat around a round table. Finance Secretary, who was behind the Hotel Plaza blast. He targeted nobody in particular. Maulana exclaimed, "Who else other than the rogues of Raw? DD Intelligence, Taliban have taken the responsibility of this blast. Secretary Home, however, we are trying to find out if they used any other group to execute this. Colonel Shakir, we will have to modify our policy. India is reacting sharply and powerfully against any infringement. The border skirmishes are causing us dearly." Maulana turned to the DD Intelligence. "Sir, I am receiving a lesser fund now." "Why?" "The Defense Secretary, even we are tight, Maulana Sahib." All looked toward Finance Secretary. He said, "The Finance Minister has discussed the budget with the Prime Minister. The PM has told him to trim the expenses wherever possible. We cannot ignore the army, but they have advised the army also not to blow their budget on Indo-Pak border. We will achieve nothing there. We have to do much in Afghanistan and Balochistan and control internal terrorism." The Maulana said in an angry tone, "I say India is making all the mischief, and how can we leave Kashmir?" Defense Secretary calmed. "Maulana Sahib, we are not leaving anything, only addressing the issues of priority in the present situation." Maulana did not look satisfied, but he said nothing further. In this meeting, they did not hash out any action plan. The DD Intelligence terminated the meeting thanking everybody. All dispersed. 15. Lahore, Pakistan. March 4, 2016. Albert arrived at the Lahore University along with the other international delegates. It was spring, but he was sad to see the condition of the land of his ancestors. He witnessed the poverty and corruption and the sense of dejection and hopelessness in society. He blamed it on the USA and India. Sanjay Srivastava had asked Rajesh to attend the Ford lectures. This was open to all students of the university. It was not any secret affair, and the security personnel present there were checking the bags of the entrance inside and were not concerned with the identities of the people. Rajesh and Leela sat in the middle row. The topic for the lectures was Pakistan's progress and the hurdles on its way. There was nothing interesting in the lectures for Rajesh. The main attraction of the program was a clergy who gave a fiery speech and blamed India for every problem faced by Pakistan. Rajesh noted Professor Albert looked impressed by him. Albert's turn came after this. Maulana. During his lecture, several times he cited from his speech and supported his views. After the program, Albert and Maulana left the venue in the same car. 16. Albert had never met Maulana personally before, but he had been following him on Twitter for quite some time. A few times, he had donated online to his charity organization, which ran a few madrasas in Pakistan. They had interacted through emails. Maulana found him fit into his plan of the things. When the Maulana invited him for a tea at his office, which was not very far from the venue, Albert considered it an honor and happily accepted the invitation. Both persons left the venue together in the Maulana's car. In his office over tea, Maulana asked Albert, "How are people doing there? We experienced issues with the government, but we can manage that." "Maulana, I have read your book The Cultures Clash. It is well written." "Thanks. You have written that the best and the longest-lasting victory over the enemy can be attained by hitting at its roots. What do you mean by the roots and how to hit it?" Maulana posed a question before Albert. "By roots, I mean culture and faith," Albert replied. When they were talking, Maulana's mobile rang. He received the call and after listening in for a while, he replied, "Close the camps. Send the boys home for 1 month. Shift your base away from the border. Inform the Colonel Shakir. The status will remain so until you hear from me." Maulana became serious. Albert guessed he must be above 60. When he was silent or talking in a friendly manner, he looked a graceful elderly person in his flowing white beard and bald head. In addition, a black mark on his forehead caused by the daily 5 times namaz and sajada showed his devout nature. His public utterances were fiery, Arabic, and controversial. The phone call seemed to have spoiled his mood. He was brooding over something now. "Have you any other engagement?" Maulana asked Albert. "I have to see my ancestral home near Lahore Gate. Can we meet tomorrow morning around 9 a.m? I will invite some of my friends as well. I want to introduce you to them." "Yes, I can come. I will leave by the night flight," said Albert. 17. Yusuf, Wahid's father, waited for his friend to return, but once gone Lala Ram neither returned nor contacted. He doubted that Lala Ram and family could not have reached India alive. He was not finding peace in Lahore. After a few years, he sold his share of the property and moved to Karachi. However, Dr. Wahid cherished more the memories of his childhood passed in Lahore. Albert had visited Lahore and Karachi a long time ago. Now, none of his relatives lived in the house near the Lahore Gate. However, he visited his ancestral house in Vajra's Lane near Lahore Gate and took a few snaps to show to Dr. Wahid. After hanging around for some time in the same street, he returned by a public bus to the guest house where he stayed along with the fellow delegates. When he arrived at the guest house, Professor Jude was strolling on the lawn. He commented, "Albert, you look so comfortable here as if you live here." "Jude, my grandfather belonged to this place. I visited this place as a child. I feel comfortable as well as disturbed by the condition of this place. I mean the country. Will you be joining us for dinner at 8 p.m? Albert looked at his wristwatch. It was about 7 p.m. "Sure," he said and continued on his way. They assembled for dinner at 8 p.m. in the dining hall. The food was not to their taste and they were not much interested in the food. Perhaps they could have enjoyed the food with wine or beer, which was not allowed there. They discussed the gifts to be bought for their families. Before going to bed, Albert called Zoya and asked if she wanted anything. She said nothing for herself. Instead, she told him to take cashmere shawls for Dada Jan and a few of her friends. He noted a few things in his diary and went to bed. 18. In the morning, when he was about to leave the guest house, Maulana called him and informed that a car would come to pick him. He went and stood at the gate. Within minutes, a white car stopped by. The driver was the same who had driven him and Maulana the previous day. The atmosphere of the Maulana's house was different on this day. Albert found a few privates and government vehicles parked along the wayside and there were standing a few armed security personnel at the gate. The Maulana's house was a large old bungalow. Perhaps The security men recognized the driver and the car carrying Albert. They entered the bungalow uninterrupted. The car stopped at the portico. A tall, fair, lanky lad in a green patterned suit with a small goatee beard and a round white cap on his head led Albert into the drawing room. Albert found a small gathering already assembled there. He could recognize two beside Maulana. One was the deputy director of the ISI and the other was a minister, whom he remembered to have seen on TV. Among other people, one was looking like a rich business person and four were looking like commandos. Maulana introduced him to the gathering, and the people present, to Albert. It surprised Albert to know the business person was an international don. His quick acceptance by them in their circle overwhelmed Albert. Actually, the Maulana and the group wanted to cultivate a new strong link in the USA. After 9/11 attack in 2001, the US had wiped out all their links there. They had since been attempting to establish useful connections for lobbying and financial backing. They had been successful in establishing a few. The Maulana found Albert quite promising and willing to help. The Maulana addressed the gathering. "Friends, we have a special guest here today, one of our brothers from America, Janib Albert. He is very much concerned about the discrimination and exploitation of our people in various parts of the world. He is a learned man, a professor of political science in the Washington University." Then he requested Albert to talk about the cultures clash. Maulana suggested him to speak from his seat as it was a closed group only. Albert spoke. "My book The Cultures Clash proposes nothing new or extraordinary. It revisits the origin, the development, of civilizations and cultures and their role in shaping human settlement and nationalities. In addition, how one group uses them as tools of suppression and winning supremacy over the other. We cannot win a powerful enemy by fighting with arms. We can achieve our purpose by hitting at the roots. When I say roots, I particularly mean faith and culture." After telling the central idea, he alluded from history. How empires were established and run by influencing the local cultures of the place by a few outsiders. People seemed impressed. The Maulana looked at the DD, who nodded in approval. Maulana declared the meeting over. Before leaving, Maulana gave a CD and a few confidential documents to Albert to study later. Albert was the last person to leave. 19. Lahore, Pakistan. When Rajesh did not understand where to start his search, he got a lead from the Lahore University. That was Albert's Maulana connection. Sometimes he thought what he was doing could be done by a junior intelligence officer, but soon he set aside his ego and reminded himself, no work is small, and anything for the nation. He boosted his morale in a funny way. He would say a tagline from a TV commercial featuring Shah Rukh Khan, one of the most popular heroes of the Bollywood, "Keep on adding small measures and keep on making it large." He used one of his local contacts to get the detail of Albert and the meeting at the Maulana's house, attended by Albert. Rajesh found it interesting that the Maulana gave a CD and some papers to Albert. Rajesh prepared a note about Albert and emailed to Srivastava in India from an internet cafe. Layla just was not enjoying the trip. There was neither thrilling action nor fun. She told this to Rajesh as well. When she asked Rajesh, "What is next?" Rajesh replied, "Wait and watch." The 20th of March the 6th, 2016, Dulles, Washington. After taking flight for almost 20 hours from Lahore when Albert disembarked at the Dulles International Airport at about 3 p.m., he was physically tired, but his feeling was high. He felt his worth more than ever. Zoya had told him that Bappa would come to receive him. He collected his baggage and cleared through immigration. The outside airport weather felt pleasantly cold as he had faced the march of Pakistan, and that was hot. Shiraz was waiting at the exit. He hugged Albert affectionately and moved to his limousine. Albert followed him. Albert kept the luggage in the back and got into the car next to his father. In an hour, Albert was telling stories from Lahore to Dr. Wahid, who was listening as keenly as a child would hear a fairy tale. After dropping Albert at home, Shiraz had gone to his shop. Zoya thought about the menu for the dinner. After some time, Albert took leave of Dr. Wahid and went to his room. He was dying to see the CD and papers given by the Maulana. He ran the CD on his desktop. He forwarded it and saw in bits to know the content, then removed it to view it later in detail. Similarly, He cursorily looked the papers and kept them in a briefcase. Zoya surprised him suddenly by hugging him from behind. He turned to her and kissed her lips. What secret you got from Pakistan? Are you trying to hide something from me? No, darling. What can I hide from you? Albert smiled at her. What will you prefer for dinner tonight? Asked Zoya. Ask Dada Jan and Papa. Anything will do for me. Any tea or coffee do you need now? First I will like to have a bath. Fine, I will come after some time. Zoya left the room. Albert went to the bathroom. 21. At night after dinner, Albert and Zoya viewed the CD and the documents together. The CD contained speeches of the Maulana along with some clippings of Gore said to be the torture camps of the Indian Army. The papers also contain articles against India, Hindus, and even a few Indian Muslim leaders. In addition, it contained a list of names and phone numbers. Zoya got worried. Why did you meet him and why did he give you all this? Concern was evident in her voice. It was an honor for me, dear. He is an important religious and political leader there. Even the government and the army respect him. Besides, can we forget our religion and ethnicity and that our origin is there? We are Americans. You belong to the third generation here. Dadaji, whose childhood passed there, never got involved in the politics of that region. He likes both Indians and Pakistanis here. I can't understand what is getting you involved in all of this. Don't worry, honey. I am not joining ISIS. Thank you, but let me warn you I will not be with you in that case, said Zoya. Albert grabbed her hand and pulled her to the bed saying, I will not let you go. 22. Albert knew his family would not approve or support his ideas or actions. He discussed nothing further with anybody, but he remained in touch with the Maulana by emails. After a fortnight, he received an email from Maulana. Dear Albert, as I told you that, we cannot wholly remain to depend on government funds and other internal resources. Try to raise fund. No amount is too small. Albert discussed the matter with Senator Mark, who used his resources to mobilize a good amount for the NGO named by Albert. On Maulana's advice, Albert had written a blog under a pseudonym spreading his propaganda. Albert was happy thinking he had a role in shaping the world order. The Maulana was glad to establish a fresh link in the USA.is. I praised and encouraged him. Albert's blog attracted groups from different regions of the globe who hated India. Some of them hated Hindus, and there were a few who hated India and its liberal Muslims. The 23rd of March the 27th, 2016 Lahore. Once again, the DD, the Colonel, the Maulana, the Defence Secretary and Don met at the Maulana's residence. The government had not opposed the plan. DD asked the Colonel, What is your idea, sir? Colonel, I have talked to the Chief. He is positive. Maulana, what do they expect from me? The Colonel answered Maulana, Janab, we will work out your brilliant plan, which you have made with Professor Albert, but I will command the operation. DD to the Don, how is your preparation? Don, my team is constantly on its toes. I have already pushed the drugs and ready to flood the Indian market with fake Indian currency. Maulana, I know your profit has been many folds this year from India. You should do some charity. Don, Janab, I have already done. Colonel to Don with a smile, you are not so naive. Janab, Maulana is hinting at something personal. Don laughed, Janab, I cannot commit such a blunder. Tomorrow all of you will receive your gift packets. Then they discussed the plan. Finally, the Colonel summed up, let me conclude now. We will go along the four broad lines. I can sum which up as minus 1. Plant rogue elements in the various universities of India, activate the planted ones and create unrest there. 2. Identify and use unscrupulous elements for spreading violence in any peaceful agitation by any group. 3. Hire unscrupulous intellectuals and print and electronic media channels to plant paid news disturbing the political stability, religious harmony and damaging the good image of India in the world. 4. Activating sleeper cells inside India and executing terror attacks in Kashmir. He added, we will prepare immediately and stage the climax when I give you a command. When we are successful in creating this mess and India gets busy, sorting it out, our defence forces can launch an operation to take Kashmir by force. He took a pause, and then asked, do you all agree? All nodded in approval. The meeting got over. All men left charged with a missionary zeal. The 24th of March, the 24th, 2016, Mumbai, India. Asim had rented a room in a thickly populated slum of Ravi, Mumbai. He desired to be unrecognized and unnoticed. Mostly he could manage it so. However, on festivals, the neighbors would not allow him to live in solitude. The house owner lady would send him some sweets prepared by her. Some people would invite him to a joint celebration of the festival. Holy morning he got a knock on the door. When he opened the door, he found the young daughter of the house owner with a packet of sweets. She pronounced, "Happy holy brother, Mom has sent sweet to you." Asim accepted the sweets and said, "Thanks. What is your name?" "My name is Anita," she answered and turned back. Asim wondered how difficult it was to live like a stranger there. People make a relative so fast. Anita met her first time that day and made him her brother. He missed his home. After some time, a group of young men knocked on his door. He peeped out through a keyhole. They were neighborhood youths with their faces and clothes colored beyond recognition. He knew a few of them but had no friendship with anybody. However, the grocer used to talk to him whenever he would go to buy something. He was a garrulous person and Asim had to answer a few of his questions sometimes. Asim answered from inside, "Sorry friends, I have a fever." The grocer asked loudly, "Aren't you making an excuse to escape from colors?" "No, I am really not well." They did not pester long. Somebody beat a tin box like a drum and he or she went away shouting, "Holy hay." Asim stayed inside for the day. He sat down at his laptop and checked his emails. There was a special message for him. A few days later, he moved to Gorakhpur. The 25th of March, the 30th, 2016, Gorakhpur, India. Inspector Khalid rushed along with his team at the spot of a bomb blast in Gorakhpur. The blast had happened in a narrow lane. He had called for the fire brigade, bomb squad, and forensic experts. This was a narrow, short, blind lane. A crowd had gathered at the entrance of the lane. Almost all the residents of the lane had come out hearing the blast. The fire brigade personnel and police evacuated a few. There was no big fire, but thick smoke was coming out through the windows and crevices of the wooden front doors of a house at the dead end of the lane. Residents informed that the house had a back door, opening into a street. Khalid cordoned off the area. The fire brigade positioned its water tanker near the entrance of the lane and they used a long hose pipe to throw water. After finding out that there was no fire left, the bomb squad got to the house, followed by Khalid. The door was locked. They broke open the door and entered the room. There was nobody inside. The bomb squad ensured there was no live bomb around. Police and forensic people started their job. They found a small pit formed by an explosion in a place and traces of human blood here and there in the room. Prima facie, there had been two men in that house who tried to make a low-intensity bomb, which exploded by mistake. By blood, the investigators inferred that one of them or both got minor injuries, as they could escape through the back door. The police seized a laptop and some extremist literature from the house. Khalid informed the detail of the incident to the headquarters, got the roads going out of the city blocked. Police launched a hunt to catch the two men. The town was near the Nepalese border, so police alerted the BSF also. Khalid's move and of smart action yielded a positive result. Within 2 hours, he caught the two youths from a Kathmandu-bound bus. One young man had a bandaged injured hand and the other youth had a burnt hand. The 26th of March, the 31st, 2016, Delhi, India. Sanjay understood by the communications received from Rajesh that the enemy was planning something different. He instructed Rajesh to return and alerted his other contacts in Pak, Bangladesh, Nepal, China, Dubai, and the USA. He went to Daljit to brief the matter. "How serious is the threat?" asked Daljit. "More than ever before, sir." "Why?" "Attack will be multi-pronged and they are contriving to use internal elements and resources." "Do you mean?" "I am afraid there may be communal and class clashes, students' unrest, terror attacks inside, and an escalation in the north and eastern borders." "Are you paranoid, Shrivastava?" Daljit asked, smiling. "No, Chief, the threat is serious," said Sanjay. Sanjay Srivastava normally would not address him as the chief. Well, Srivastava, I think we should alert the NIA and the Home Minister. Yes, sir, said Sanjay. After this discussion, Sanjay took a leave of Daljit and got to his room. The 27th of April 1st, 2016, Delhi, India. Rajesh sent Leela to the US for a few weeks and returned to India via Dubai. He stayed for 1 day in Dubai. His stay proved useful as one of his contacts there gave him some tips on Kareem and Alex, which he immediately passed over to the Indian authorities. When landed at IGI Airport Delhi, he was satisfied to know by reading in a local newspaper that Alex had been caught by the customs authorities with a huge amount of heroin at Coach Inn, and Kareem had been arrested by the Delhi police with a large amount of fake Indian currency notes. He went straight to the headquarters of the SWIB and reported to Sanjay Srivastava. Sanjay was happy to see him. How are you, Rajesh? Sanjay asked. I am fine, thank you. Real challenges lying ahead. I understand, sir, said Rajesh. Sanjay gave him a thick envelope and said, This is for you. Rest for a day and be on the job tomorrow itself. Rajesh took the envelope, thanked him and came out of the office. 28. When Rajesh opened the envelope, he found 1 lakh rupees and an order and authorization letter in his name. The next day afternoon he flew to Gorakhpur by an Air India flight. In about 2 hours, he reached there. Inspector Khalid received him at the airport. From airport, they went straight to the central jail. Rajesh showed his papers and identity proof to the jail superintendent, who allowed him to interrogate the 2 persons arrested in connection with the bomb blast in Gorakhpur. By this interrogation, Rajesh found out that they had links with Pakistan. They were preparing for some simultaneous action in many places for which a command would be given electronically from some other country. He returned to Delhi and gave his report to Srivastava, who now ordered him to take charge of the cyber wing of SWIB. The 29th of April 2016, Pakistan. The colonel had given a green signal to the Maulana. Maulana had readied the ground and chose April the 11th, 2016, to start. On April the 10th night at about 11 p.m. Colonel got a call from the Maulana. Janab, don't forget to view Indian news tomorrow morning. The Colonel suggested. Let us see this drama together, Janab. Wonderful idea, let's us have tea together at my place, Maulana said. After this Maulana invited the Defence Secretary, Don, and some other friends to tea the next morning. The next day 8 a.m. all assembled in the drawing room of Maulana. They had served tea. Maulana turned on the TV and opened the Aaj Tak news channel. As expected, they were showing the news of the previous night. When they saw the visual of a group of youths waving the flag of Pakistan in Delhi and raising slogans against India and in favour of Pakistan and demanding independence of Kashmir, they congratulated Maulana. Maulana ran his right hand on his beard with a smile. All were as jubilant as any Pakistani would be over Pakistan cricket team winning a match against India. Many celebrated that day in Pakistan. 30. India, April 2016. It shocked the whole of India to see this anti-national activity so brazenly and intrepidly done in the nation's heart. A few of these young men belonged to a local university. They were arrested. Soon the agitations and protests started in different parts of the country by various fringe elements and pressure groups on various issues, and almost all protests turned violent. The government deployed army at some places. A section of the print media published articles focusing only on the points of conflicts between the different religious communities. Some people criticized everything connected with the religion. The sold media created the impression that there was nothing good left. Indian intelligence agencies knew this in advance and had alerted the government. All the law enforcement agencies had been on alert, but they had been advised to use a controlled action as the enemy was using some local people and resources and trying to battle out an Indian ground with local resources. However, the army had a free hand to deal with the enemy at the borders. The 31st of May 2016. Finally, based on the serious intelligence inputs, the government of India decided to act off. It took an unusual and drastic step. Taking a cue from France and Belgium, it imposed an emergency for 5 days in the country. For 5 days, Law enforcement authorities conducted raids day and night. Entering no place was a taboo for them. They caught outsiders and insiders rogues and put in jails. Almost all sleeper cells were busted. This big operation was done swiftly and with no publicity. Media was not allowed in many places. Maulana and his team had chosen May 14, 2016, for the final assault. Once again, they had assembled at the Maulana's house to enjoy together the plight of India on TV. The colonel had issued the command, which was to reach India via the US through Albert. They planned this so to avoid interception by the Indian intelligence agencies. They did not know a copy of the CD and documents had reached SWIB and they had hacked all the communication between the Maulana and Albert. All sat before the TV. Maulana turned on Ajtak News. They expected to see the whole of India burning. There was no word of any bomb blast anywhere. He changed channels. There was no news of any disturbance in India. Maulana turned to Colonel Shakir and uttered, "I think India has foiled our plan." Colonel Shakir felt so furious and frustrated that he got out his revolver and shot at the TV screen. All ran for a cover, fearing an explosion. But there was no explosion. The bullet got into the TV screen, punching a very clean hole through the glass. A few seconds later some smoke oozed out of the hole and there was a smell of something burning in the air. India had foiled the enemy's plan.